New developments tonight for young immigrants in the program shielding them from deportation. Why the judge says it's only temporary.
When I had the baby, they were telling me to make sure that I wasn't smoking or being around anybody that smokes.
A UC San Diego study looks at mothers who smoke pot, what doctors know and don't know about the effect on breast milk.
We mix it with molasses, so it's a nice little sweet treat for them. We try to mix it as well as we can into their feed.
Talk about a cow trick, the unexpected ingredient that could help cut down on greenhouse gases. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebone Monet. A small victory today for supporters of the federal program protecting young immigrants from deportation. A federal judge in Texas declined a request to stop the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA. Texas led a group of 7 states suing the U.S. government to end DACA. President Trump also tried to end the program last year. There are 3 federal orders requiring the government to keep DACA running as the legal challenges continue. This may be a temporary measure for DACA recipients. The judge also says the program oversteps the authority of the executive branch. Immigrants have long complained of freezing temperatures in U.S. Customs and Border Protection holding cells. Now some say they're burning up at the Otay Mesa detention facility. KPBS education reporter Jean Guerrero reports.
Several asylum seekers at the facility say the AC in a unit holding about 120 people has been broken for almost a week. It's nearly 80 degrees in Otay Mesa. Pedro Pavon of Honduras says he can't take it.
This is an oven. It's like they're cooking us in here.
Alex Mensing of immigrant rights group Pueblos Sin Fronteras gave this audio to KPBS. He says this is dehumanizing.
It's part of a strategy to wear people down, to not make them feel that they deserve to be here, and so that they give up and self-deport.
Mensing says he's received other complaints about the facility, like inadequate medical care and verbal abuse from guards. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
An audit of the Public Utilities Department is complete. It highlights numerous incompetencies within the department that led to thousands of exceedingly high water bills. KPBS reporter Jade Hyman has more.
Well, the city revealed some details of this audit on Thursday, and now the performance audit of the lid and cover replacement program is complete. It reflects problems of accountability and management oversight in the Public Utilities Department. The city says there is a backlog of 25,000 damaged water meters in San Diego that either need new boxes or lids replaced. The audit says while boxes and lids are only supposed to take about 6 months to repair, the average time frame is almost 2 years. Having them broken is not only a liability for the city, but it can impede their ability to be properly read, which accounts for some of the incorrect water bills. It's one of the many problems uncovered by the audit of the city's Public Utilities Department. Eduardo Luna, who's conducting that audit, said the problem falls on bad management.
One of the key problems was that there was really limited oversight in terms of management, and workers were essentially spending about 3.6 hours per day in the field actually repairing boxes. They weren't hitting their targets of what they should have met.
Well, Luna said employees spend so much time loading trucks and traveling from point A to point B, they only spend a small fraction of their workday on actual repairs, which is why there's that backlog of 25,000 meters that need to be fixed. The city said in a news conference that they are addressing workflow issues. The auditor is now looking into customer service and implementation of smart meters. Jade Hindman, KPBS News.
A $1 billion plan to reduce wildfires in the state is headed for a final vote tonight. The Senate bill would relax vegetation rules and set aside new funding for fire departments in cities. There's also language that reduces the liability of utility companies. That includes the 2017 wildfires, where flames were sparked by PG&E power lines.
They failed us, and the solution that they've come up with really shifts the liability, shifts the cost, basically to the ratepayers of PG&E and those people who lost their homes, and in some of those families that lost their lives and their loved ones. Those are the people that will have to pay at the end of the day, because if the cost grows for their liability, then so will the cost to the ratepayers, and that's not right. It's a bailout. and it's shameful.
Both the Senate and Assembly face a midnight deadline to vote on the measure. The first TV ads of the season are launching in the 49th congressional race to replace Republican Darrell Issa. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John says the candidates are coming out of the gates swinging.
It's not yet Labor Day, and the two candidates competing in the 49th congressional race to replace Darrell Issa are already launching attack ads. Diane Harkey, who is Issa's hand-picked successor, has a cable TV ad which accuses Levin of being an attorney who was affiliated with Countrywide during the mortgage crisis.
Predatory lending, deceptive loans, unfair practices. That was Countrywide Financial.
Levin's campaign denies ties to Countrywide's deceptive practices, saying that Levin worked for a firm contracted by Bank of America that fought fraudulent mortgage claims after Bank of America bought Countrywide. Levin is hitting back at Harkey with an 8-minute online video featuring people like Lynn Hasney, who lost everything in a Ponzi scheme managed by Harkey's husband involving real estate investments.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if that she's using all the money that they got from duping all of us to fund her campaign right now.
A California appeals court recently affirmed Dan Harkey's conviction in a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme. Diane Harkey was listed as an officer in the company but was not implicated in the conviction. The 49th Congressional District is one of the most competitive races in the nation. Mike Levin has been the most successful fundraiser so far. He raised more than $2 million leading up to the June primary. Diane Harkey raised about $700,000 leading up to June. About $100,000 of that was a loan from herself. Allison St. John from the North County Bureau.
A new study from UC San Diego finds babies could be getting marijuana from their mothers. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says smoking moms are transferring components of the drug through breast milk.
According to researchers, mothers who smoke pot could pass along marijuana's psychoactive ingredient, THC, while nursing babies.
But it doesn't tell us how much is actually getting into the baby's bloodstream and whether those small amounts actually have an impact on the child.
Christina Chambers was the study's lead investigator. She says samples were taken from 50 different women who smoked pot daily, weekly, or just occasionally.
It's a matter of the dose, but it's also a matter of the size of the baby and how mature the baby is and how mature their gastrointestinal system is. And during a period of time when you've got rapid brain development that's continuing for the first few years of life, whether or not even small doses might have an effect, and we don't know.
While more research on this topic is needed, some mothers say doctors are already warning them not to smoke while breastfeeding.
When I had the baby, they were telling me to make sure that I wasn't smoking or being around anybody that smokes, but it was just anything, if it's marijuana or cigarettes or cigars. They told me to try to stay away from people that are smoking or not to smoke myself, because it says it can affect the baby, but they didn't give me like the percentages or what could happen.
Researchers plan to continue tracking the mothers to see what effect, if any, THC has on babies. In the study, breast milk with THC was found in 2/3 of mothers who smoked pot. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
It was found that THC could stay in the mother's breast milk for up to 6 days after use. A sweet treat for cows may help cut down on greenhouse gases. UC Davis researchers say it could help them burp better. AP reporter Terry Che explains how.
It's breakfast time at this dairy farm at the University of California, Davis. But this cattle feed contains an unusual ingredient, seaweed.
We mix it with molasses, so it's a nice little sweet treat for them. We try to mix it as well as we can into their feed, but we have some cows that'll pick it out, and we have some cows that'll go right for the seaweed.
If they don't eat the seaweed, then we won't see any reduction in methane.
UC Davis is testing whether seaweed can reduce emissions of methane, a potent greenhouse gas that's released when cattle burp, pass gas, or make manure. Dairy farms and other livestock operations are major sources of methane. That's why California is requiring them to cut emissions by 40% by 2030.
Reducing methane ultimately means reducing greenhouse gases and reducing the impacts of climate change. So it affects everybody in the globe.
This is a wild Atlantic kelp.
Before feeding seaweed to the cows, UC Davis researchers tested in this lab, where they can measure emissions in fermenters that simulate cattle stomachs.
And we can test the effect of different feed additives on the gut microbiology.
Here we have some milk samples.
They also test milk samples for flavor and nutritional value. The methane content of the cow's breath is measured when they stick their heads in these feeding machines. The first study of the seaweed diet only involved a dozen cows, but early results show promise and larger studies are planned.
And so far, it's very encouraging. We've seen over 30% of reduction in methane emissions.
Around the world, dairy scientists are looking for ways to reduce cattle emissions by spicing up their diet. They've tried garlic, oregano, cinnamon, and even curry, with mixed results. At the University of Wisconsin, researchers are studying how a cow's breed, as well as what and how much they eat, affects their emissions, which they measure with this treat dispensing device.
The machine draws air from the breath of the cow, and the machine continuously measures the concentrations of the methane in the air.
Really what drives the emission from the cow is how much the cow eats. Because the more the cow is going to eat, the more she needs to process that feed, and the more methane she's going to produce.
Researchers hope seaweed and other food additives can help reduce emissions and make dairy farms more climate friendly. Terry Che, Associated Press, Davis, California.
Sunny and dry in San Diego. Expect more of the same for the weekend. Justin Pavic has your Labor Day forecast.
As we go throughout the next couple of days, temperatures will actually come down a bit as the onshore flow increases. Could see that switch around late next week, and will also be on the dry side. Winds could kick up a bit over the higher terrain and the interior deserts as we work our way into early week as well. Hey, to kick off that Labor Day weekend, why not venture on out to Petco Park and check out the Padres taking on the Rockies? Beautiful evening here. Again, that first pitch around 5:40, temperature at 78 degrees, partly sunny conditions. All right, last 6 hours, nothing on the radar. Again, those low clouds will come back into play toward the coast here, again, as we go throughout the overnight. And even some of the inland valleys could see a few clouds here as we go throughout the weekend to start things off. In the grand scheme of things, no standout features. Monsoonal moisture remains off to the east. So let's check out tonight. Temperature-wise, down to 66, Chula Vista, Oceanside 64. Ramona down into the 50s. Borrego Springs, of course, much warmer, where we drop off into the 70s. And in the metro, upper 60s, those clouds come back into play later on tonight. For tomorrow, clouds to start, sunshine for the afternoon toward many of the coastal zones as we work our way into the higher terrain. Could see a few clouds around Mount Laguna at 77. Borrego Springs back into the mid-100s. Talking about temperatures in Oceanside, right around 80 degrees. Hey, we're pretty close to normal here as we kick off the weekend. And even as we venture into Sunday, very small scale changes. The moisture stays off to the east, so we're not talking about wet weather anytime soon, but the winds will come up a bit as we talk about the interior. Check out the coast here. Numbers coming down a bit early week for Labor Day, just a few degrees with some clouds, and then we'll see increasing amounts of sun, a little warmer conditions by Wednesday. Same situation here, inland locations, a few degrees dropped each day from Sunday into Monday. We'll pick that back up by Wednesday with dry conditions throughout. A little breezy here over the mountains early week. Temperatures for highs in the mid-70s, and notice we're down into the double digits over the deserts. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic. Back over to you, Ebony.
The U.S. is working on a new trade deal with Mexico. Consumer confidence is up, and it's the busiest Labor Day weekend ever for travel. Earlier today, I spoke with SDSU marketing lecturer Mira Kopik for the Friday Business Report. So, Mira, the U.S. is close to working out a new trade deal with Mexico and possibly Canada, which would potentially replace NAFTA, which President Trump has repeatedly referred to as a bad deal for the U.S. Who stands to benefit?
At this point, depending on what happens with Canada, the people who benefit are the U.S. auto companies and part suppliers, because supply chain doesn't change. That's a big relief to them. Mexican workers and plants are reasonably well protected. And then in the United States, the winners are auto workers in the South, because they're not unionized and their cost per hour is fairly low, because 40% of the deal requires you to produce cars in plants where workers earn $16 an hour at a minimum. The losers are potentially auto plants where workers are unionized in Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin, where their labor rates are much higher. Also, consumers are losers because the way the deal is structured, it's going to drive the cost of the price of a car up because it requires local steel to be used, and domestic steel is much more expensive than imported steel.
Now, analysts believe, moving on, that the economy will remain strong in the near future, and they're thinking this, attributing this to consumer confidence. What do the numbers show?
Consumer confidence is very important. So we are at a 18-year high in consumer confidence at a rating of 134, and confidence has really grown in the last 12 months. However, when you really look at the data, there's a little bit of a worrying part because we're at a place where we were just before the dot-com collapse, where current situation is rated really high, but expectations are rated really low. This is the biggest gap in over 20 years. And so what happens now is that if you look at it, people were buying houses, cars, appliances, and if you look at the last 3 months, people are not buying houses, they're not buying cars, real wages are declining, so all the positives of the positive economy are not working for individuals. And what's worse, there was a study that was out earlier in the week by the Hudson Institute, and they noted that last year 40% of Americans could not meet their basic needs paying rent, healthcare costs, utilities, or food costs. So it's a mixed news. So on the one level, it's very positive because we've had momentum, but the momentum going forward could be at risk.
And finally, it is the Friday before Labor Day weekend, and it could be a record breaker for air travel. Is this another sign of consumer confidence?
You know, again, it's looking a little bit backwards. Yes, it is, because in the first half of the year, airline tickets went down 4%. Consumers had more money in their pocket with the tax cuts, all great stuff. So when they were planning their trips for Labor Day, we have almost 17 million people traveling by air, which is an increase of 5%. What people have to worry about for the next few months as they're planning their holiday travel is that the airlines have seen a 30% increase in their fuel costs, a 6% increase in their labor costs, and ticket prices for airline travel are going to increase substantially in the fourth quarter. So it's good to book now because on Monday, JetBlue announced that they were increasing their baggage fees by $5 and their change fees and cancellations fees by $50, and every airline is expected to follow suit in the next week or two.
So book right away. Thanks for talking with us. Mira Kopik, thanks for joining us, marketing lecturer with SDSU.
Happy Labor Day.
Thank you. San Diego saw the median home price soar to nearly $580,000 last month, the highest price ever, according to CoreLogic. The hot housing market in Boston is also challenging for first-time homebuyers. From WGBH News, reporter Adam Riley says one developer wants to make a big statement with a small solution.
On a vacant lot in Dorchester's Fields Corner neighborhood, what looks like a supply shed is actually an experiment in affordable housing.
This is the model of one of 14 very affordable studios that we want to build.
That's Vivian Girard. If his plan comes to fruition, those 14 units will be packed into a building about the size of a traditional triple-decker, and they'll be extremely cheap.
With a price range of $650 to $850 a month as a rental.
That's including utilities. A few things inspired Girard's project. First off, he spent a few years in his 30s as a single guy reluctantly living with roommates.
So this is what I would have wanted to live in on a budget.
Today, Girard is married. He and his wife run the Homestead Cafe in Fields Corner. They pay pretty well, $15 to $17 an hour. But even so, Girard says his employees face the same quandary he did a few years ago.
There was nothing affordable for a single person to live in other than living with housemates.
So Girard decided to create it. 6 units will rent for $850 a month. The other 8 units will rent for just $650, with priority given to Homestead employees like Tamara Riddick.
I'm on a list. I'm on the list. I made sure that I'm at least number 2 if I'm not number 1.
Riddick is in her early 20s, studies at Bunker Hill Community College, and lives with her mother because she can't afford not to. But if and when she gets one of the 141 Westville units,
it'll actually give me some room to save for a car. And I'm thinking of dual enrolling to another school so I'd be able to pay the tuition there.
The project isn't a done deal. Usually, Boston doesn't allow new units smaller than 450 square feet, almost twice the size of this model. The city's made exceptions for developers who provide some sort of shared communal space. But according to affordable housing activist Grace Holly, that wouldn't fit Girard's plan.
The cost would go up and he wouldn't, the units wouldn't be as deeply affordable.
For the record, she hopes he succeeds.
Any micro units that get built, they tend to be, developers call them millennial resorts. They're so high end, even 300-something square foot units are starting at $2,500 a month.
Here is about trade-off and compromises.
In contrast, 141 Westville takes the opposite approach, meaning no frills and a price almost anyone could afford. Adam Riley, WGBH News.
You can read more about the micro-housing development at WGBHnews.org. Thousands of people lined up for blocks outside the U.S. Capitol to say goodbye to Senator John McCain. His family paid their respect inside the Capitol Rotunda.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, services are held to honor longtime Senator John McCain and the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
We have a correction to our weekend preview segment from yesterday. We said the 1812 Overture concert would broadcast tonight. It's actually being recorded tonight and it will air tomorrow night at 8 right here on KPBS. Getting to know people and places in San Diego and Imperial County is what the KPBS Explore project is all about. We traveled to 5 communities to find out what makes them so special. Tonight, we visit National City and how the community is changing. Here's the latest from our series, Where I Come From.
This is the popping area in the next 5 to 10 years. This is going to be hot. Let's just say it and let's get over it. The topic is gentrification.
It's a changing community, which can also breed fears of too much change and rents going up in the future. But right now, it's a great transition.
And so when people talk about National City, and I'm talking about even my own colleagues in the legal profession, without really knowing or being from San Diego, they talk about it as a dangerous place, or it's ghetto, or that's where the gangs are. And so it still has a lot of that stigma, when in reality, it's a very safe neighborhood.
Like, I live on Brick Row, so it's beautiful right there. Janice, the person that runs it, she's been involved in shutting down a few of the places that I guess have led to it being perceived as a bad place.
We work with the city doing a lot of community projects. We'll build like a gathering place in the park, or we'll make over a school building. That gets diverse people together.
It's a chance for the neighborhood to take back their parks, take back their waterways, really kind of take back the city.
But there's a place for Starbucks. Just what are we doing to maintain that local economy? And the community in National City has struggled, and some of these struggles during many years.
Whether it's like arts, culture, or even dispersing funds, we tend to get overlooked.
There was a lot of conflict and let's say some barriers to make this a welcoming city.
And I think it should really just, put a fire in your butt for change.
National City stands really strong to be a city that's going to set a standard to maintain the roots, the family, those values, and thrive.
You can watch the rest of this series at kpbs.org/where I come from. And we'd like to hear what you think about our series. Join the conversation on the KPBS Facebook page. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. And tonight, we leave you with a musical celebration of the Queen of Soul. Voices from so many genres gather today to say goodbye to Aretha Franklin. Thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend.
The sound.